He was worth $500 dead or alive. The poster said desertion. The poster said cowardice. But the 11-year-old boy who found it in his saddlebags, knife in his belt, guarding his mother's door all night, heard something that didn't add up. Because cowards don't stay calm when a baby stops breathing. Cowards don't talk a terrified mother's hands through the one thing that stands between her child and death. And cowards don't ride 8 days through a Montana winter with a hole in their side to save a family that owes them nothing. Here on this channel, we believe the West was made not by men without fear, but by men who were afraid and showed up anyway, and the women who were brave enough to let them in. What this story proves: a wanted poster tells you what a man did. A single night in a blizzard tells you who he is. Hit subscribe, drop a comment with your city, and share this story, because some men deserve to have their name cleared, and some stories deserve to be heard. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. Thank you for being part of our community.
Josie used the knife she kept on the porch to slice the stirrup leather. The man fell free and did not move. His coat was torn open and the blood underneath had soaked through everything, freezing in dark sheets right against his skin. The horse staggered toward the barn on instinct alone. "Mama?" Hattie stood in the doorway, just 13 years old, with a kitchen knife in her hand. "Mama, what do we do?" "Get your brother. Ezra now." Josie knelt beside the stranger and pressed 2 fingers to his neck. The pulse was weak, but it was there. She pulled his collar back and saw his face. His dark beard had silver at the jaw. A deep gash above his left eye was already swollen shut. "Mister," she said, shaking his shoulder. "Can you hear me?" His lips moved. She leaned closer. "The horse," he whispered. "Do not let the horse die. She is all I have." Josie sat back on her heels. A man half dead in a blizzard, and his first words were about his horse. It was the same fool thing her Robert would have said. "Mama, I am not helping you bring a stranger inside." Ezra stood in the doorway, only 11 years old. He wore his father's hunting knife like a man twice his age. "Papa said—" "Your papa said a lot of things, Ezra. He also said a Bellamy does not let anything die on their doorstep if they can help it. This is different." "How?" "Because Papa is not here to protect us if this man is trouble." The words hit her like a slap, because they were true. She looked at her son, his jaw set, his fear hiding behind all that stubborn pride. She saw every night he had spent lying awake since Robert died, trying to be the man of the house. "Ezra James Bellamy," she said, her voice level. "I have a rifle. You have a knife. Your sister has the shotgun shells counted by the back door. We are not helpless. Now grab his arm before he freezes solid." Ezra grabbed the stranger's arm without another word, but his hand never left that knife. They dragged him inside and laid him by the fireplace. Josie bolted the door and turned to find her children ready for a battle. Hattie stood between the stranger and the little ones. Clementine, 8 years old and silent since the funeral, watched from the far wall with enormous dark eyes. Sam sat on the floor clutching a wooden horse, and baby Birdie wailed from the crib, her cries getting weaker from a fever that had been burning for 3 days. Josie peeled back his coat. The gash ran from his lower ribs to his hip, deep enough to show muscle. She had stitched leather and canvas before. She had even stitched a wound on Robert's arm once. "I need the sewing kit," she said. "The good needle, and boil thread in the kettle." "You are going to stitch him?" Ezra asked. "Unless you want him bleeding on the floor your papa built." She cleaned the wound with whiskey from a bottle she had never opened until tonight. The stranger came awake with a sharp breath, his hand shooting out and grabbing her wrist. He had a strong grip. Then he saw her face and let go like he had touched a hot stove. "Easy," Josie said. "I'm not going to hurt you." "Sorry, ma'am." His voice came out scraped and raw. "Where am I?" "Bellamy Homestead. Your horse dragged you here." "She found you," he said. And something that looked like gratitude crossed his face. "Good girl." "You have a name?" "Silas. Silas Thorne." "Well, Silas Thorne, I am about to push a needle through your skin. I would appreciate it if you did not grab me again." "Yes, ma'am." He took the stitches without a sound. He just lay there with his jaw locked and his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Josie had seen Robert take pain before, loud and cursing. This man took it quiet, like he had practiced. 19 stitches, she said when she had finished. "It will hold." "It is good work," he said, turning his head to look. "Better than most field." He stopped himself. Josie caught it. "Better than most what?" "Nothing, ma'am. Just grateful." From the crib, Bertie coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made the whole cabin go still. Josie was on her feet in a second, lifting her daughter, feeling the heat pour off the child's small body. 3 days, Hattie said quietly. "The fever will not come down. I have tried everything." "Dr. Finch?" Josie asked, though she already knew the answer. "Drunk." Tommy Adler rode out yesterday and said the doctor could not even stand up. Josie held Bertie closer. The baby's breathing sounded like tearing paper. Each breath was a fight. She had heard this sound before, the night Robert's mother died while the snow piled up outside. "How old is she?" The stranger's voice came from the floor. "Do not concern yourself," Josie said. "Ma'am, how old is that child?" "3. She is 3. Silas closed his eyes. When he opened them, the careful blankness was gone, replaced by an urgency that burned right through his pain. "Her lungs are filling," his voice cut sharp. "I can hear it from here, the rattle. That is fluid building where air is supposed to be. If you do not clear it tonight, by morning she will not have enough room in her chest to take a breath." Josie stared at him. "How do you know that?" "Because I have heard it before. I know what it sounds like when someone is drowning from the inside." "Who are you?" "Right now," he held her gaze, "I am someone who can help your daughter. That is all that matters." Ezra stepped forward, planting himself between Silas and the crib. "Mama, do not. We do not know this man. He could be a murderer." "Ezra, no." The boy's voice cracked. "Papa trusted that foreman at the logging camp, and that man got him killed. I am not trusting nobody, just because they talk pretty and look hurt." Silas looked at the boy, and he did not flinch. "You are right," Silas said. "You do not know me. Your daddy taught you to protect this family, and that is exactly what you are doing." He paused. "But I am asking you to weigh that against what you are hearing from that crib. Listen to your sister breathe, and then decide." The cabin went quiet, except for Bertie's labored breathing. Ezra listened, his knuckles white on the knife handle. "Tell me what to do," the boy said. "But if you hurt her, I swear to God." "If I hurt her," Silas said, "you can use that knife. It is a fair deal." And so they built a steam tent together. Silas gave directions from the floor, his voice steady. Hattie boiled water in every pot they owned. Ezra rigged blankets over the crib, his hands quick and clever. Josie crushed dried mint and sage, filling the cabin with a sharp, clean smell. "More steam," Silas said. "Keep it thick. She needs to breathe nothing but wet heat for the next hour." "She is just so tiny," Hattie whispered, her hands trembling as she fixed the blanket over the crib. "Too little for all this." Silas spoke from the floor, his voice steady. "Little is not the same as weak. I have seen babies come through things that would put a grown man in the ground. They fight because they do not know any other way." Just then, Clementine was at Josie's elbow, quiet as a shadow. She held out a little bundle of dried wild thyme tied up with string. "Clem," Josie breathed, "where on earth did you find that?" The little girl just pointed to a loose board under a shelf, her mama's secret spot for her best herbs, the ones for real trouble. "Good girl," Josie said, a lump in her throat. She put the thyme in the steaming water. The air smelled richer, and Bertie's next breath came just a little bit easier. It was not much, but it was something. "Honey," Silas said. "Warm honey with a drop of mint water. Just a spoonful at a time. It will soothe her throat. Will soothe her." "We are almost out of honey," Hattie worried. "Use it," Silas said, his eyes locking with Hattie's. "Every last drop. You cannot save honey and lose your sister." Hattie snatched the jar. They worked all through the night. Josie carefully spooned honey water onto Bertie's dry lips. Ezra kept the fire blazing hot, his face set and serious. Sam had fallen asleep on the floor, his head resting on the stranger's arm, trusting in a way only a child can. Clementine sat near the crib, her hand resting on Bertie's foot through the blanket, giving the only comfort she knew how. Twice the baby stopped breathing. The first time felt like an eternity. Josie's own heart stopped. Silas, calm as you please, said, "Turn her on her side." Josie did it without thinking. Bertie coughed, sputtered, and let out a scream. It was the most beautiful sound Josie had ever heard. The second time, close to 3 in the morning, lasted longer. Josie froze, holding her baby, praying to a God she had been mad at for 2 long years. "Pat her back," Silas said. "Between the shoulders. Be firm. I will hurt her. You will save her. Do it now, Josie." He used her name for the very first time. She did not even realize it until much later. She patted Bertie's back, firm, like he said. The baby coughed up something awful, then took a huge gulp of air. Josie let out one ragged sob. At dawn, Bertie was breathing steady. The fever was down. She was asleep on Josie's chest, her tiny fist tangled in her mother's hair. Silas had passed out hours ago, his face pale, fresh blood on his bandages. He had spent the night saving a stranger's baby instead of resting. Josie looked at him. This man who told her to use all the honey, who knew what to do when a baby was choking, who had called her by name and made her hands work when her heart had stopped cold. "Mama?" Hattie whispered, her eyes dark with exhaustion. "Who is he? How does he know all that? How does—" "I do not know, honey." "Are you going to ask him when he wakes up?" "Yes." Hattie was quiet for a second. "He saved her, Mama. Whatever else he is, he saved Bertie." "I know," Josie said, looking at the sleeping man, then at the rifle by the door. "So for now we wait, we watch, and we keep that rifle loaded." While the others slept, Ezra was awake. He stood over the stranger's saddlebags, his expression suspicious. He had been watching them all night. He opened the first one. Clothes, bullets, coffee, nothing. He opened the second. His fingers found a folded piece of heavy paper. By the lamplight, he unfolded it. At the top, in big black letters, it said "Wanted." Below was a drawing of a man's face. It was the same face sleeping just a few feet away on his mama's floor. "Wanted. Silas Thorne. For desertion and cowardice. $500 reward." Ezra's hand went to his own knife. He looked at his sleeping mother and baby sister. He looked at his little brother, curled up against a wanted man. He folded the poster, tucked it in his pocket, and sat down in front of the door. He put his knife across his knees and waited for the stranger to open his eyes. Silas woke up feeling like he was being watched. He opened his eyes and saw Ezra sitting there with a knife and a look that was far too serious for a boy his age. "Morning," Silas said. Ezra did not even blink. "I found something in your bags." Silas knew right away what he meant. He had carried that poster for 3 years. "I figured someone would," he said quietly. "Desertion and cowardice," Ezra said, his voice low. $500. That is more than my papa made in 2 years. It is. So you are a coward who ran, Ezra said, his jaw tight. And you came into our house. You touched my baby sister. What kind of man does that? There was a hard knock at the door. Josie jumped, grabbing the rifle. Ezra pointed his own knife toward the sound. "Mrs. Bellamy," a man's voice called out. "My name is John Harding. I am an attorney." Josie opened the door just a crack. The man looked respectable, holding a leather briefcase. Behind him, the banker, Mr. Croft, stood with 2 hired men looking smug. "You are trespassing, Croft," Josie said. "Not for long," Croft sneered. "These foreclosure papers say this land is mine." "Actually, they do not," Mr. Harding said, stepping forward. He handed a different set of papers to Josie. "These documents, filed this morning, prove your late husband paid this land off in full. The loan you have been paying was a fraud." Croft's face turned pale. "That is impossible." "It is ironclad," Harding said. "Now I suggest you and your men leave before Mrs. Bellamy decides to press charges." "A boy like that deserves a man who can look him in the eye," Silas said, hiding the pain. "The kind of man who was not supposed to be here," he added, "whose horse found your barn in a blizzard. I did not ask for this, but my sister is breathing this morning, and for that I am not sorry. Do not you call me son." Ezra slowly unfolded a wanted poster. "I am showing this to Mama. Then you are leaving. Storm or not, you are gone." "That sounds like your Mama's decision." "I make the decisions now." The boy's voice cracked, showing the fear under his toughness. "Someone has to keep us safe, not some stranger with blood on my Mama's floor." "Ezra?" Josie's voice came from the doorway. She held the sleeping baby, her face showing she had heard it all. "Mama, look," Ezra said, holding out the poster. Josie took it, her eyes scanning the words twice. Silas watched her pull the baby birdie just a little closer. "Desertion," she read. "Cowardice." "Yes, ma'am." "Is it true?" "I left my unit," Silas admitted. "Walked away. But the coward part is a lie told by a man blaming someone else for his own failure. I cannot prove that now. So why should I believe you?" "You should not. Words are cheap. But you heard your daughter breathe last night. You heard what I said to do, and it worked. A coward runs from hurting people. He does not run toward them." "You have 2 days," Josie finally said, "until the storm breaks. You do not touch my children. You do not touch our things. You sleep right here. If you have lied about anything, you will answer to me." "Mama," Ezra whispered, stunned. "I heard you, son," she said gently, "and I am proud of you. But I am your mother. This is my house, and this is my call." Ezra's face was a mask of anger and hurt. He shoved his knife in his belt and stalked out into the snow without a coat. "He is angry," Silas observed. "He has been angry for 2 years," Josie replied. "He has carried this family since we buried his father. And this is not trust, Mr. Thorne. You are staying because my baby needs you. The second she does not, you are gone." Hattie placed a bowl of oatmeal on the floor beside Silas, not on the table. The message was clear. "Thank you," he said. "Do not thank me," she replied, her eyes far older than her years. "I am grateful for what you did for Birdie. But grateful and trusting are 2 different animals. I learned that the hard way." "From your father?" "From the man who swore the logging job was safe. Papa believed him. Now he is gone. Do you understand me, Mr. Thorne?" "Perfectly." The morning passed in a tense quiet. Silas gave instructions from the floor while Josie tended to the baby. The silence was broken by 6-year-old Sam holding out a bowl of melted snow. "For your face," he said. "Mama says cuts need cleaning." "Sam, leave him be," Hattie called out. "But his face is all messed up." Silas took the small bowl. "Much obliged, Sam. Mighty thoughtful." "Mama says I am the thoughtful one," Sam said, sitting down. "Ezra is tough, Hattie is smart, and I am thoughtful. What are you?" The injured one mostly? No, in your family. The question stung. I was the oldest, Silas said. I had a sister, Ruth. She was the stubborn one. Where is she now? Ohio. That is far. Do not you miss her? Every day? Then why do you not go see her? The cabin went silent. Everyone was listening. Sometimes, Silas said quietly, a man makes choices that take him so far from home. He cannot find his way back. That is silly, Sam stated. You just get on a horse. Mama says every road goes two ways. Your mama is a very wise woman. Best in Montana, Sam declared. Sam, go check the chickens now, Josie cut in. The boy knew he was being sent away. I will be back with more questions, he told Silas. I will be here. Promise? Silas caught the warning in Josie's eyes. I will be here when you get back from the chickens, he amended. That is all I can say for sure. Sam nodded. At the door, he stopped. That poster said you deserted the army. That is right. Were you scared? No. Then why run? Because staying meant watching people die who did not have to. A 6-year-old's ferocious seriousness. To her, that sounded a whole lot more like courage than cowardice. And so the boy went out into the snow. Josie finally let out a breath she did not know she was holding. She knelt to check on the baby, close enough that Silas could smell the wood smoke in her hair. She told him, he asks the right kind of questions, the kind most grown-ups are too afraid to ask. Don't mistake not knowing any better for being brave. She looked straight at him then. Maybe not knowing better is exactly where courage gets its start. You said you know the sound of a man drowning from the inside. That is not the talk of a trapper. Are my children safe here with you? Safer with me than without me? That is not what I asked. He met her gaze. I have never in my life laid a hand on a child, and I would die before I let anything happen to yours. That was the truest thing he knew how to say. Josie stood up. She did not thank him. She did not say she believed him. She just went back to the kitchen and started heating more water. But she left the rifle leaning against the far wall instead of keeping it by her side. Silas understood that was the closest thing to trust he was likely to get. By afternoon, the baby's fever had dropped. The whole cabin found a careful rhythm, a family learning to work around a stranger in their midst. Ezra returned with his arms full of firewood he had been splitting all morning in the cold, his hands raw and cracked. He dropped the wood by the stove and refused to look at anyone. Josie said, "Thank you, Ezra." He just grunted and sat in his chair. Silas spoke up. "Your hands. There is a salve for that. I do not need anything from you. Suit yourself. But frostbitten fingers do not get better on their own. A family that needs a boy who can fix things cannot afford for him to lose the feeling in his hands." Ezra's jaw was tight. He stared at the fire, then he stood and held his hands out to Silas without saying a single word. Silas took them, his movements practiced and efficient, like someone who had done this 1,000 times before. He gently checked the fingertips for color. "Nothing permanent, but you will need tallow on these tonight. And you need gloves next time." Hattie spoke from the kitchen. "My gloves got a hole in them. I can fix that." Hattie brought a jar of tallow and set it down. "You show me how to wrap them, and I will remember." Silas showed her. Hattie watched with sharp focus, her own hands mimicking his motions. She asked smart questions about pressure and keeping the blood flowing right. It told him she had been the one holding this family together long before he ever showed up. "You are good at this," Silas told her. "I am good at what it takes to keep my family alive. Mama cannot do it all, so I do what needs doing. That is a heavy burden for a 13-year-old. I did not ask for your opinion on my burdens, Mr. Thorne." "No, ma'am, you surely did not." Clementine had been watching the whole time from her spot by the window. She had not said a word. Silas was beginning to understand that she did not speak at all. But then she moved to a shelf, took down a pair of leather gloves with a tear in the thumb, and set them next to Silas. She did not look at him. She just went back to her window. Hattie spoke quietly. That is the most she has communicated with anyone outside this family in 2 years. She stopped talking the day Papa died. Silas picked up the gloves. They were a father's gloves, brought to him by a daughter who found a way to speak without making a sound. "I will fix these tonight," he said. No one answered, but for the first time, no one objected either. Silas knew something had shifted. It was not trust, not yet. It was too new and fragile for that word. But the air had changed. A door that had been barred was now just closed. And a closed door, unlike a barred one, can be opened. The wind howled that evening, piling snow against the walls. After the children were in bed, Sam and Bertie first, then Clementine, Hattie settled in to read from her mother's recipe book. Ezra kept his watch by the door, a knife resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on Silas. "You can get some sleep," Silas told him. "I am not going anywhere. That is what I am afraid of." Josie brought Silas fresh water and bandages. She changed his dressing with steady hands, her face close enough that he could see the deep exhaustion she hid from her children. "Bertie's breathing is better," she said. "The steam will be needed for at least 3 more days. Then I suppose you are not leaving in 2 days. Suppose not." She finished the bandage. "My husband was lost to a man's lies. A foreman swore the timber was safe when he knew it was not. Robert believed him." She paused. "I do not have that luxury anymore. I have 5 children, 40 acres, and a town full of people who think I should sell this land before the winter kills us all. Are they wrong?" Her chin came up. "Robert Bellamy? My husband built this place from the ground up. He is resting on that ridge right there. My babies were born in this very room. I am not going anywhere." Virgil Crane. The name tasted sour coming out of her mouth. "He owns near half this valley, and he has wanted this land since before my Robert passed. Our creek is the only water for miles that does not ice over. He tried to buy us out 3 times, and the last time he was not asking nicely. Sent his boys to rip out our fences, claiming a surveyor messed up and that 20 of our acres were his. I rode to town, showed the judge our deed, and Crane had to back down. But men like him do not quit, and I might not be so lucky next time." Silas knew all about men like Crane who thought money made them right. "How many men does he have?" he asked. 8, maybe 10. "And what have you got?" "A boy of 11 with a knife, and a girl of 13 with her mother's grit. I have a rifle, and I am a dead shot. 1 rifle is not much against 10 men. I never said I had a good plan, Mr. Thorne. I just said I am not leaving." Silas glanced over at Ezra, still standing guard by the door. The boy had not budged, but his head was cocked just so, taking it all in. "Your boy hears everything," Silas said softly. Josie nodded. "He is always listening. Helps him stay watchful." She wiped her hands on her apron. "You need to rest, Mr. Thorne. Bertie is going to need you before sunrise." She headed for the back room, then stopped at the door. "You asked if my children were safe with you here, but you never did say what you are running from." "No, ma'am, I surely did not." "Well, when you are ready to talk, I am ready to hear it. Just do not take your sweet time. Secrets out here have a bad habit of showing up when you least expect them." Then she was gone. Silas just lay there, listening to the wind howl and a little girl breathe easy, all because a stranger wandered in. Silas reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a stack of letters he had carried for 6 long years. Every last one was from his sister Ruth, and none had ever been opened. Ezra saw him but kept his silence. Outside, the blizzard howled. 4 days later, the fever broke. Little Bertie sat right up and gave her mama's braid a good hard yank. The sound Josie made, somewhere between a laugh and a cry, got everyone's attention. "She is hungry," Hattie said, already grabbing the broth. "I see, honey, I see." Josie's voice was shaky, but her hands were sure as she lifted the child. Birdie was all fuss and fury, a tiny whirlwind grabbing at anything she could reach. The awful sound in her chest was gone, and her eyes were bright and mad, the way a 3-year-old gets when they have been cooped up too long. Sam rushed over, overjoyed. "She is all better, Mr. Silas. You fixed her." "Your mama did the fixing," Silas corrected from his spot by the fire. He was finally sitting up, some color back in his face. "I just gave some advice." "That is not what happened," Hattie said, pouring some broth without looking his way. Her voice was softer now. "We all know it." Ezra stayed quiet, whittling a stick down to nothing over by the door. He was still on guard, but Silas saw his eyes kept drifting to Birdie. "Ezra, come hold your sister," Josie called. "I am busy. You are making shavings. Come hold this baby." He moved, taking Birdie with a practiced gentleness. She immediately grabbed his ear and pulled hard. A corner of Ezra's mouth turned up, almost a smile. "Ow, you quit that bird." "Bah," Birdie chirped. "That is not my name." "Bah." "She is trying to say your name," Sam insisted. "She is saying Ezra. She is just making noise." Watching them bicker, Silas felt a pain in his chest, a feeling he had locked away for 6 years. It was the warmth of family. He remembered his own Sarah, who called him Cius because she could not say the L, Mr. Thorne. Hattie was beside him with fresh bandages. "Time to change this dressing. Mama said I need to learn for after you leave." Her words hung in the air, a plain reminder that he was just passing through. "Take the old one off slow," Silas told her. "If it sticks, use a little water." Hattie worked with a quiet skill, her hands steady. She looked at the wound with a practical eye. "It is healing up clean," she said. "Your mother's handiwork. Told you she had skilled hands." "She is good at everything," Hattie said. "Just does not get told that enough." As she wrapped the new bandage, she spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead, that poster. It says you are a coward. Ezra thinks you ran from a fight. But when Birdie could not breathe, you were calm as a Sunday morning. You did not sound like no coward. So either that paper is lying or I do not know what a coward is." "The poster is not lying about what I did," he said. "I left my men in the middle of a battle. That is called desertion." "But why?" Silas paused. He knew Josie was listening from the kitchen. She always was. "There were families," he said quietly. "Women and children, stuck on the far side of a bridge. My commander told us to leave them behind, but you did not. I went back for them." "Did you save them?" "Every single one. So the army made you pay for it. They needed a scapegoat for a battle that went wrong. A man who broke ranks to save civilians was an easy target. A surgeon." Hattie finished tying the bandage. "So you are a doctor. Mama figured as much." I could tell she was wondering how a drifter knew more than our town doctor. Silas sighed. Dr. Finch was probably a good man once. Drinking can wash a man away, a little at a time, until there is nothing left. That is a polite way of saying he is no good to anyone. It is a true way of saying he is in a world of pain. Hattie looked him square in the eye. "You know what I reckon, Mr. Thorne? I reckon you are the kind of man who cannot leave a broken thing alone. You just have to try and fix it. And I suspect that is what landed you in this mess to begin with." The storm finally gave up on the 5th day. The wind settled down, the snow let up, and a sliver of blue sky appeared. The world was quiet and covered in white. "The trail to town will be clear by morning," Josie announced. "Loved this land. I aim to keep it." The next morning, the snow had stopped. "I need to tell you something," Silas said, "before that trail opens up and people start coming through." Josie sat at the table. "I have been waiting. You know what the poster says. You know I left my unit. What you do not know is why." He took a slow breath. "There was a man, Colonel James Harrison. When the Confederate line broke at Willow Creek, Harrison panicked. He ordered a full retreat. He told us to abandon the civilians who were sheltered nearby, and you disobeyed. I went back across that bridge. I loaded those families onto wagons and got them to safety. 12 people, including 4 children. By the time I got back, Harrison had already written his report. He said I deserted under fire. Said my cowardice made us retreat. He needed someone to blame, and a field surgeon who ignored a direct order was easy. Could you not tell your side of the story? To who? Harrison had the rank and the connections. All I had was the word of terrified people who scattered as soon as they were safe. There was no trial, just a warrant and a price on my head. Josie's hands were flat on the table. And this Harrison? Last I heard, he is a congressman building his name on a war record made of lies. She was quiet for a long time. The coward who left those families to die is sitting in Washington pretending he is a hero, while the man who saved them is on my floor with a hole in his side. That about sums it up. I had a daughter, he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Her name was Sarah. She was 4. My wife was Catherine. After the warrant, I had to run. I told myself I was keeping them safe by staying away. I figured if the army could not find me, they would leave my wife Catherine and my daughter Sarah alone. His voice turned flat. Diphtheria took them both the next winter. I was miles away hiding in a cabin like this one, while my family died. He heard Josie's sharp intake of breath. I could have saved them. That is the weight I carry. Not the war, not the poster. I had the skill to save them. And I was not there because I was hiding from a lie. Mr. Thorne. Silas. My name is Silas. I am telling you this so you know exactly who is in your house. I am a man who let his family die to save himself. That is worse than any poster. No. Josie's voice was sharp as steel. It is not. A disease did that. A corrupt officer stole your life and your chance to be where you belonged. You are carrying guilt that belongs to another man, and I will not sit here and let you drown in it. Silas stared. You do not know me well enough to say that. I know you spent 5 hours on my floor, hurt and bleeding, and talked my baby through the worst of it. Night of her life. Don't you dare stand there and tell me you're a coward. I saw you teach my daughter how to wrap hands against the frost. I watched you stay calm as a summer morning when my own son held a knife to you. And I know you mended my dead husband's gloves, all because a little girl who has not spoken in 2 years asked you to without making a sound. Josie's eyes were burning bright. So you go on and tell someone else you are scared, but not the woman who has watched you at work. For a long while, the only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the wind whistling low outside. Then a small voice said, Mama. Clementine was standing in the doorway. She had heard it all. You could see it in the way she stood so still, the way a child does when they are trying to understand something heavy. Josie turned. What is it, sweet girl? Clementine walked right up to Silas, her feet making no noise on the floorboards. She looked at him with those big dark eyes, and he felt the weight of her stare. She was sizing him up. Then she reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a little wooden bird, carved by loving hands and worn smooth from years of being held. She put it right in Silas's palm, plain and simple. Then she turned around, went back to her spot by the window, and sat down. That was Papa's, Hattie said quietly. He made it for her the day she was born. She has not let another soul touch it since he passed. Silas looked at the little bird in his hand, but the weight of it was somewhere deeper. It was in that place where he had locked away everything that hurt to care about. Thank you, Clem, he whispered. She did not look at him, but she lifted one small hand and pressed it flat against the cold window pane. He was beginning to learn that was her way of saying what silence could not hold. 2 days later, the trail cleared, and Trouble came riding up on a fine horse with an easy smile. Josie saw the 2 men first. She knew the man in the lead long before he was close enough to call out to. "Crane," she said, and the name tasted like ash. Silas was already on his feet, sore but steady. Josie reached for the rifle. "Hattie, you take the children to the back room." Mama, I want to stay." "Take them." "Ezra, get behind me," Josie warned, seeing the fear hiding underneath her son's tough glare. "And don't you say a single word." Virgil Crane rode up to their porch like he owned the whole wide world. He was a tall, silver-haired man whose smile never once touched his eyes. Beside him, a watchful deputy sat tall in the saddle. "Mrs. Bellamy," Crane said, tipping his hat. "Glad you made it through the storm." "We're fine," she said flatly. Crane's eyes skipped right over her and landed on Silas. "Looks like y'all have a guest." "He is just a traveler caught in the storm," Josie answered quickly. "He will be moving on." Crane dismounted slow, making himself at home. "I'm Virgil Crane. I own the next ranch over, and you are just passing through?" Silas looked back at him. "Most folks who are just passing through usually have a name. And most folks don't get asked for one on someone else's porch," Crane replied, his smile vanishing. The deputy laid his hand on his pistol, a clear warning. "Mrs. Bellamy, I am here with an offer," Crane said, pulling out a paper. $300 for your 40 acres. That is generous, seeing as there is no man here to work it. This land is worth what I say it is, Mr. Crane, and it is not for sale. Now be reasonable," he said smoothly. "You have 5 children and no husband. A hard winter nearly took your youngest. Are you willing to bet their lives against the next storm? Do not you dare use my children to try and scare me. I am trying to help a woman in your position." "A woman in my position," she said, her voice turning to steel, "built this place with her husband, buried him on that hill, and got her children through the worst winter this land has ever seen. I do not need your help or your money," she finished. Crane's friendly act was gone. "I will leave the offer open," he said. "But you should know the surveyor is coming in the spring. There are questions about property lines around here. A woman without a lawyer might find things very difficult. Are you threatening me, Mr. Crane?" "I am just informing you," he said, swinging onto his horse. He gave Silas one last hard look. "And I would be real careful about the company you keep." They watched him ride off. Ezra's knuckles were white on the handle of his knife. "He knows," the boy whispered, "about the poster." "Not yet," Josie said. "But he will. A man like that makes it his business to know everyone's secrets." "I ought to leave," Silas said quietly, "before I make this worse for you." Josie turned to face him, her expression firm. "Are you fixing to run again, Silas Thorne?" "I am trying to keep you all out of my trouble." "Your trouble saved my daughter's life," she shot back. "It is a little late to keep us out of it." She held up a hand when he started to speak. "Do not you dare say my name all soft and then tell me you are leaving for my own good. One man has already left me, and he did not have a choice. If you are going to go, then go. But do not you pretend it is for us." Ezra looked from one to the other. "He is right, Mama. If Crane finds out about that poster, he will send for the law." "I know," Josie said. "So what is the plan?" Her eyes swept over her son, the stranger, and the cabin that was her whole world. "The plan," she said, her voice full of resolve, "is that we stop running. All of us. We are going to learn how to fight." The next morning, Josie rode for town with the deed to her land in her coat. Silas sat down and wrote a letter he should have sent 6 years earlier. Ezra watched his mother leave from the barn, unhappy that she had left Silas in charge. "She trusts you," Ezra said to Silas without looking at him. "She trusts me to keep y'all safe." "Not the same thing," the boy muttered. "Close enough." Ezra kicked at the frozen ground. "What happens when Crane finds out who you are?" "He will use it as leverage, just like he uses everything else." "And what happens to us?" Silas knew the boy was asking what would happen to the people he loved. "He will have the marshal arrest me," Silas said plainly. Then he will threaten your mother with charges to make her sell. He gets the land, and your family gets nothing. So we lose it all. Not if we move first, Silas said. He held up a sealed envelope. I wrote to a man I served with, Tom Morrison. He was at Willow Creek Bridge. He knows the truth. If this letter gets to him, and he is still a good man, that wanted poster will not matter anymore. And if he is not, then I will leave before Crane can use me against your mother. I promise. You make a lot of promises for a wanted man. They are the only ones I have left, Silas said. Ezra took the letter. The boy took the letter, his mind made up. I am taking it to the post office. My mama left me that mule. Silas shook his head. Your mother told me to keep you all here. The boy shot back. She told you to keep us safe. Getting this letter in the mail is the safest thing for this family. He pulled on a pair of his father's old gloves, stitched up by firelight, and walked to the barn without a look back. Besides, someone has to ride to town, and I know every back trail from here to Elhorn Creek. As Silas watched him go, he felt a small shift between them. It was the first sign that maybe, just maybe, they were on the same side of this fight. Inside the house, Hattie moved with a quiet strength, her voice filling the small cabin as she read from her mother's recipe journal. Mama Crawford always said the best bread needs patience and warm hands, she read while stirring a pot of beans. You cannot rush the rising, just like you cannot rush healing. Both things take the time they are meant to take. That was a smart woman, Silas said. The smartest I ever knew. Hattie nodded. Papa said she should have been a doctor. Maybe she was just a different kind, Silas thought. Hattie put her spoon down. I heard what you told Mama last night, about your little girl and your wife. Sarah, he said quietly. That was her name. She had her mother's eyes and my own stubborn ways. And you believe if you had been there, things would have been different. I know they would have. Diphtheria can be beat if you catch it early. Steam, fluids, keeping the throat clear, the same things we did for Birdie. His voice cracked. I knew what to do. I just was not in the room to do it. Hattie let the silence settle for a long moment. Papa was in the room when that tree fell on him. All the knowledge on God's green earth would not have saved him. Sometimes the thing that comes for you does not care one bit what you know. You carry that guilt around thinking you had a choice. But guilt is a hungry thing, Mr. Thorne. If you feed it for long enough, it will eat up everything else. The back door flew open and in came Sam, wrestling with a chicken that had made a run for it. Hattie, Margaret got out again, and I think she tried to eat my boot. Samuel Robert Bellamy, if you do not stop naming those hens. Sam held on tight, his face beaming with the pure joy of a 6-year-old boy in a battle of wills with a bird. The whole scene was so ridiculous that Silas actually laughed. A real, genuine laugh that surprised him so much he stopped. He could not remember the last time he had truly laughed like that. Sam looked at him with pride. See, Mr. Silas thinks it is funny. Mr. Silas thinks you are about to lose a finger. Now put that hen back. In the quiet that followed, little Clementine came and sat near Silas. She held her father's carved wooden bird and a piece of charcoal. On the hearthstone, she began to draw. A small cabin, a horse, and 5 little figures standing in a line. Next to them, she drew a 6th person, taller than the others, with the same careful detail. Silas watched her, saying nothing. Some things do not need words. Josie got back from town looking like a thundercloud. She swung off her horse, handed the reins to Hattie, and marched straight into the cabin without a word to anyone. Silas gave her 5 minutes, then he followed her inside. What happened? Crane already went to the judge. He is filing a formal challenge to our property lines, says he has a surveyor coming from Helena in 2 weeks. She stared into her coffee cup. He has also been spreading rumors, telling folks I have a drifter, a strange man living here with my children. Agnes Whitfield told me half the town thinks I have gone crazy. What did Agnes say? That a respectable widow does not invite strange men to sleep under her roof. And that if I cannot manage this place on my own, I should find these children a proper home with a proper family. Josie's jaw was set like stone. A proper family. As if the one they have is not good enough just because it is missing a father. Crane is poisoning the well, turning folks against you. I saw it in their faces today, Silas. People I have known for years looked at me like I had done something shameful. You saved your daughter's life. I let a stranger into my house. For a woman out here alone, that is more than enough to start trouble. Just then the back door opened and Ezra came in, stomping snow from his boots. His face was red from the cold. "Ma'am, the letter is sent, but I heard things in town." "What kind of things?" "Crane's deputy, a fella named Wyatt Polk, was in the saloon talking loud about a reward poster for a deserter. Said he heard one might be hiding out in this valley." Josie's eyes shot to Silas. "He knows. He suspects," Silas corrected. "But that is a difference that will not last long. We are running out of time." Josie started pacing the kitchen floor, her mind racing. "The surveyor will not be here for 2 weeks. We have to get the original survey documents, the ones Robert filed when he first claimed this land. They are in the Territorial Records Office in Helena. Robert filed them himself back in 1871. But Helena is a 4-day ride, and that is in good weather. This time of year—" "I will go," Silas said. Josie stopped in her tracks. "You will go? A man with a wanted poster hanging over his head is going to ride for 4 days through mountain passes in the dead of winter? I am the only one who can. You cannot leave your 5 children, and Ezra is too young for a ride like that alone. Those papers are the only thing that proves Crane is a liar. If someone recognizes you, then I will handle it. Right now, your land is more important than my freedom. Do not you dare say that. Do not you dare put yourself below a piece of dirt. This is not about dirt, Josie. This is about your children having a home. It is about Birdie growing up in the place her father built for her." He took a step closer. "For 6 years, I have not protected anything but myself. Let me protect something that actually matters." The cabin fell silent. 6 figures stood together in front of a house that looked an awful lot like this one. "You come back," Josie said finally. Her voice was not asking, it was telling. "You get those papers and you come on back. That is the price of you going. I will come back. You said you do not make promises you cannot keep. Then I will keep this one." He rode out before dawn. Josie had packed his saddlebags with food they could not spare and bandages they might need. No one said a big goodbye. Hattie just nodded from the kitchen. Sam gave his leg a quick hug and told him to bring back candy. Clementine, though, as he walked past, she pressed a folded piece of paper into his hand. He waited until he was a mile away from the cabin, the horse moving slow through the deep snow. When he unfolded the paper, he saw her drawing, the 6 figures, the cabin, and the horse. Underneath, in a child's shaky handwriting, were the first words anyone had seen Clementine Bellamy write in 2 long years. "Come home." He carefully folded the paper and put it in his breast pocket, right next to his sister's unopened letters, and rode on. Ezra watched from the barn as Silas rode away. Then he went back inside, barred the door, and sat in his chair with his knife ready. But this time, it was pointed at the door, not at the man who had slept inside. 3 long days went by. Josie kept the homestead running on pure grit, watching the trail every night with a rifle in her lap. On the 4th morning, Crane returned. He brought 4 men with him this time, and they spread out around the cabin like they were expecting a fight. Crane walked onto the porch holding a piece of paper. "Mrs. Bellamy," he said, "I have a court order. It says you cannot use the 20 acres along the creek until the surveyor gets here." Josie took the paper from him. Her hands were steady, but he could see the muscle jumping in her jaw. "These 20 acres you are claiming have our spring on them, Mr. Crane. You are fully aware of that." "I am aware the law is the law, ma'am, and it says this land is in dispute. The law says whatever you pay Judge Pruitt to say." Crane's smile never wavered. "Careful, Mrs. Bellamy. Accusing a judge is a mighty serious thing, almost as serious as hiding a fugitive from the army." The words hit her like a cold slap. "I do not know what you are talking about," Josie said. "Oh, I think you do. My man Wyatt here has been talking with the marshal's office. Seems they have got a reward out for a fella named Silas Thorne, a deserter, $500. Crane looked past her into the cabin. He would not still be around here, would he? There is nobody here but my children and me. Is that right? Crane nodded to his deputy. Wyatt, why do you not go have a look-see? You are not setting foot in my home. Ma'am, I have a lawman with a badge who has reason to suspect you are harboring a wanted man. He has the right, Ezra stepped from behind his mother. And I have got a rifle that says he does not. The whole yard went quiet and still. The boy stood there on that porch, leveling his daddy's hunting rifle right at the deputy's chest. His hands were firm. His face had that awful calm of a person who has decided this is where they will make their last stand. Ezra, Josie whispered, put it down. No, Mama, they are not coming in our house. They are not taking our water. The rifle stayed put. I am 11 years old. I have been the man of this house for 2 years, and I am finished with people taking what is ours. Son, you do not want to do this, Crane said, holding up a hand. I am not your son, and you do not know a thing about what I want. Ezra, Josie's voice dropped low and fierce. Lower that rifle. Not because they are right, because you are better. Your daddy did not raise a boy to shoot men on his own porch. He raised you to be smarter, to find another way. The rifle trembled, but it did not lower. There is another way, Josie pleaded. Trust me. Slowly, so slowly, Ezra lowered the gun. Crane just smiled. Smart boy. Now, about that search. That will not be necessary. A new voice cut through the air. Everyone turned to see a man on a horse approaching at a calm pace. He wore a fine suit and carried himself with authority. I am Thomas Harding, the man said, swinging down from his horse. An attorney retained by Mrs. Josephine Bellamy 3 days ago. Josie just stared. She had not hired any lawyer. Mr. Harding paid her no mind, his attention fixed on Crane. I have reviewed your claim, Mr. Crane, and my associate has already collected the original survey documents from the records office. They clearly establish Mrs. Bellamy's property lines filed by her late husband back in 1871. There is no dispute. There never was. Crane's face turned the color of week-old snow. Who hired you? That is between me and my client. What is not privileged is this. Harding pulled another paper from his coat. It is a formal complaint to the territorial governor about Judge Pruitt signing papers without a proper review. The governor does not take kindly to that sort of thing. The deputy slowly moved his hand away from his gun. The air on the porch had changed, and every man there could feel it. This is not over, Crane snarled. Actually, Harding said, it very much is. Now, I suggest you leave Mrs. Bellamy's land before I add trespassing to that complaint. Crane got on his horse, giving Josie a look that promised he would be back, but he left. As the sound of their horses faded, the only thing you could hear was the wind. Josie turned to the lawyer. I did not hire you. No, ma'am, you did not. But a man named Silas Thorne came to my office 4 days ago. He was half frozen and bleeding, but said a woman in Elorn Creek was about to lose her home over water rights. Harding then reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. He also asked me to give you this. Josie took it. Her name was on the front, written in a hand she had come to know well. She waited until the lawyer was gone and the house was quiet again. She waited until the children were settled, and Ezra was sitting with the rifle across his lap, though his eyes finally looked less like a soldier's and more like a boy's. In the soft light of the kitchen lamp, she opened the letter and read the 3 short lines Silas Thorne had written. The documents are real, Tsar. The lawyer is paid through spring. I am coming back, model. Josie watched them go, then turned to the lawyer. I did not hire you. No, ma'am, you did not, he said. A man named Silas Thorne came to my office 4 days ago. He told me a good woman out here was about to lose her home. Mr. Harding pulled an envelope from his pocket. He also asked me to give you this. Josie took it. Her name was on the front, written in a hand she knew from the longest night of her life. She waited until the lawyer was gone and the cabin was quiet again. Birdie was sleeping peacefully. Ezra was still in his chair, but the look in his eyes was finally that of a boy, not a soldier. In the lamplight, she opened the letter and read the 3 short lines Silas Thorne had written. "The documents are real. The lawyer is paid for. I am coming back. Your family gave me something I figured was lost for good, a reason to quit running." Josie folded the letter, pressing it to her chest where her heart had been locked up for 2 long years. Her boy, Ezra, was watching her close. "Is he coming back?" he asked. "He says he is." "You believe him?" Josie looked at her son, this tough, scared kid who'd stood down 4 grown men to protect his kin. He was the same boy who'd risked himself to mail a wanted man's letter, just 'cause it was the right thing to do. "I do," she said, and that was enough. Ezra nodded, then pulled his daddy's mended gloves from his coat and set them on the table. They'd be there for the stranger when he came home. Outside, the Montana sky was finally clear, with stars burning like ice, and somewhere on the trail, a man who'd been running from nothing for 6 years was finally riding toward something. He was headed to a cabin with a warm fire, 5 children who had changed him deep down, and a woman who told him not to say her name soft unless he meant it. And Lord help him, he meant it. Silas finally rode into the Bellamy place on the 8th day. The horse came first, just like that first night, moving steady through the snow like she knew her home was better than he did. Josie saw him from the kitchen window. She set down the rifle she'd been keeping by the door and just stood there, her hands flat on the table her husband Robert had built. For the first time in a week, she let herself take a full breath. Hattie looked over from the stove. "He's back." "I see that." "Well, go on out there, Mama." Josie pulled on her coat and stepped onto the porch. Silas got down from his horse real slow, his left side hurting him worse than before. He was thinner, and his coat was torn, but he was here. He looked at her across the snowy yard with a kind of certainty in his eyes she'd never seen before. "You're late," she said. "Got held up." 4 days held up. The kind of hold-up that has federal marshals in it and a congressman who wants the truth buried. He tied up the horse and pulled a thick leather folder from a saddlebag. "Brought something back with me. A man I used to serve with, Tom Morrison," he wrote back. "He's been holding on to evidence about what really happened at Willow Creek for 12 years, just waiting for someone to ask." Silas's hand trembled a little as he held it out. "It's all in here, Josie. Witness statements, his own testimony. Everything I need to clear my name." Josie looked from the folder to the man. "Come inside. You look like you're about to fall over." "Been falling for 8 days. Ain't hit the ground yet." "Don't start now. I just swept." Before Silas even cleared the doorway, Sam hit him at the knees. The little boy had launched himself off the porch like a cannonball. "You came back!" "I said you would, 'cause you promised. And Mama says Bellamy's keep their promises. And you're almost a Bellamy now." "Sam, let the man breathe," Hattie called from the kitchen. But she was smiling, a real smile. For the first time since Silas had met her, it made her look like a young girl again, not a little woman with the world on her shoulders. "I don't live here," Silas said, setting Sam down easy. "I'm just—" "If you say passing through, I'll smack you with this spoon," Hattie warned. Near the fire, little Birdie was chewing on a block of wood. She looked up when Silas came in and held up both her arms, not for Josie, but for him. "Bah," Birdie said. "She's been saying that all week," Hattie explained. "Sam thinks it's your name." Ezra spoke up from his chair by the door. "It don't mean his name," but he was standing, and his knife was on the table, not in his lap. "It's just baby talk." Silas nodded at the boy. "Thank you for mailing that letter. It made all the difference." Ezra just shrugged, but his face softened a bit. "Didn't do it for you. Did it for Mama." "I know. That's why it counts." Clementine came out from the back, walked right up to Silas, and pulled her folded drawing from his pocket. She studied it, then looked at him, her eyes asking a question she didn't have the words for. "I kept it with me the whole time," Silas told her gently. "Right here." Clem took her picture back and pinned it to the wall right next to her father's Bible. Then she went to her spot by the window and put her hand flat against the glass. "Reckon that means you passed," Hattie said. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Josie sat with him at the table. She read every single page of Morrison's evidence. "This is enough," she said when she was done. "More than enough. Morrison thinks so. He's already talking to a federal judge in Cheyenne, a man with a reputation for being honest. He's agreed to look at the case. And Harrison? His people know something is coming. That's why I was late. 2 of them picked up my trail. Hired guns, same type Crane has." Josie's face went cold. "They found you?" "They found me. I lost him in the mountains, but this connects it all, Josie. Crane's man, Wyatt Polk, served with Harrison in the war. They ain't 2 different problems. Crane and Harrison are tied together. Crane's been doing Harrison's dirty work in this valley for years, getting land and power. Your homestead was just in his way. Robert's homestead." Her voice still caught on his name. "He picked this spot for the water. Said whoever had the creek had the whole valley. Your husband was a smart man." "My husband was a good man," she corrected. "Smart men look out for themselves. Good men look out for everyone else." She looked straight at him. "You remind me of him. It's the thing I like least about you, 'cause it's dangerous. It gets people killed." She reached out and touched the back of his hand. It was the first time she had touched him, just to touch him. "Don't you get killed, Silas. These children can't lose another soul." He turned his hand over and wrapped his fingers around hers. "I'm not Robert. I spent 6 years learning how to live through things that should have killed me, and now I've got something to come back to." She didn't pull her hand away. They sat there in the quiet lamplight with the winter pressing against the cabin walls, testing for a crack but finding none. The trouble came 12 days later. The air was so cold it felt like it might snap. Ezra burst through the door, his face pale and his breath coming in clouds. "Riders, Mama. 8 of 'em coming up the trail fast." Silas was on his feet in an instant. "It's Crane. Polk is with him, and other men I ain't never seen. They're all armed, Mama, every one of 'em." Josie didn't waste a second. "Hattie, get the children to the root cellar, now." "Mama, I'm not hiding." "Hattie May, you take your brothers and sisters underground, and you don't come out till I come for you. You hear me?" Hattie heard. She gathered a quiet, scared Sam and picked up a fussy birdie. She reached for Clementine, but the girl wouldn't move. "Clem, we have to go," Hattie pleaded. But Clementine just stood at the window, her small hand pressed flat against the cold glass, watching the riders come. It ain't right, a man with power thinking he can just roll up and take what he wants from folks just trying to get by. That was Crane, and Josie Bellamy was the woman standing in his way. This story's about what happens when good people get pushed too far, and why you should never ever give up the fight. When those riders came into view, Josie stood her ground on that porch like she was carved from oak. Her little girl, Clementine, looked from the men to Silas, the stranger Josie had taken in. Then she walked right past Silas, grabbed a small wooden bird her daddy had carved, and pushed it into another child's hand. The little girl pointed to the root cellar, then to herself, and shook her head with a fierceness that would make a grizzly blush. She was staying to fight. Josie's heart nearly stopped, but Clementine held up all 10 of her little fingers, then pointed to her mama, 1, to Silas, 2, to her brother Ezra, 3, and finally to herself, 4. She was counting their guns, so to speak. Ezra, his voice all gravel, said, "She's saying we need every hand we got." And bless her heart, she was right. That's when the mother in Josie stepped back, and the woman who'd survived a hard winter on pure grit took over. "Clem, you watch from the back window. Ezra, you're with me. Silas, You be where they need you least and we need you most. Crane rode up, flanked by his hired muscle, looking as smug as a fox in a henhouse. "Miss Bellamy," he called out, his voice slick with false authority. "I'm here with a warrant to search for a wanted man. Step aside, and this can all be peaceful." Josie didn't so much as blink. "Let's see that warrant." Crane showed her a piece of paper from a judge he owned, lock, stock, and barrel. "That ain't worth the ink it's printed with, and you know it, Crane. The governor's already looking into your puppet, Judge." Crane just grinned. "That's for the lawyers to figure out. Right now I've got this paper and 8 men. You've got a porch. She's also got me." Silas stepped out from the shadows of the cabin to stand beside her. "And I'm the man you're looking for, so you can drop the act." Crane's eyes narrowed. "Silas Thorne, $500 on your head. Surgeon, soldier, and the man who saved 12 people while your boss ran like a coward," Silas shot back, holding up a worn leather folder. "And I've got the proof right here." The whole yard went still. One of Crane's men reached for his gun, but you could see the confidence draining right out of them. "Polk, go get him," Crane ordered. As Polk swung down from his horse, Ezra stood his ground on the porch and leveled the rifle. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," the boy said, his voice steady. "Son, you best put that weapon down before someone gets hurt." Josie laid a hand on the rifle's barrel, not to lower it, but to steady her son's resolve. Just then, a sound from inside the cabin froze every person in their tracks. A voice, high and thin from not being used, shattered the silence like old glass. "They're coming!" Clementine cried out, the words tumbling out after 2 long years of silence. "Mama, there are more riders coming from the north, a whole mess of them." Josie whipped around to look out the back window. From the trail leading into town, a cloud of dust and snow rose. Through it, a long line of riders, maybe 15 or more, rode with a clear purpose. Crane saw them, too, and the smirk on his face vanished. The rider in the lead spurred her horse forward. It was Agnes Whitfield, who ran the town's only diner, riding a huge draft horse like she was born to it. Right behind her were folks Josie knew well: shopkeepers, ranchers, and even the school teacher. "Mornin', Virgil," Agnes called out, reining in her big horse with more authority than Crane had ever shown. "Heard you were paying the Bellamys a visit. Figured you might appreciate some company. This is official business, Agnes. It's got nothing to do with you. Everything that happens in this valley has to do with me. I feed most of the folks in it." Agnes glanced at Josie on the porch, and a silent understanding passed between them. "I also had a chat yesterday with a federal judge, a man named Worthington. He had some mighty interesting things to say about you, Virgil. About your dealings with a congressman named Harrison and a 12-year plot to ruin the man standing on that porch." The color drained from Crane's face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Well, then you won't mind waiting here for Judge Worthington. He's about an hour behind us." Agnes gave a smile that wasn't friendly at all. "We took a shortcut. Didn't want to miss the fun." That next hour was the longest of Josie's life. Crane tried to ride off twice, but was blocked each time by the townspeople. Polk gave up his badge without a fuss when the blacksmith, Garrett, a man who stood 6'4", suggested it was the healthier choice. The hired guns just faded into the hills. Judge Worthington finally arrived, looking every bit a man who'd served justice for 50 years. With him was Tom Morrison, carrying a leather case full of papers, and looking like a man who'd just set down the heaviest burden of his life. "Silas," Morrison said, getting off his horse. They just looked at each other, letting 12 years of silence and guilt wash away. "I should have spoken up a long time ago," Morrison said. "You're speaking now. That's what matters." The judge held his court right there in the Bellamy's yard, with the whole town as his witness. He looked at Morrison's proof and took statements from Silas and a couple of Crane's own men who suddenly found their voices. He compared the real property papers with Crane's forgeries. By the middle of the afternoon, it was all over. Crane and Polk were taken into custody. The warrants were declared void, and Silas Thorne's good name, which had been dragged through the mud for 12 years, was finally cleared. "Mr. Thorne," the judge said, "on behalf of the court, I owe you a sincere apology. What happened to you was wrong, and the men who did it will pay. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me. Thank the woman who kept you safe to see this day." The judge gave Josie a look of pure admiration. Later, Agnes Whitfield came up to Josie on the porch. The older woman looked smaller, humbler. "I said some things in town," Agnes started, "about you and the children and him, things that weren't fair and weren't true." "No, they weren't," Josie said softly. "I'm sorry, Josie. My Robert would have been ashamed of me." "Robert would have said that folks make mistakes, and the ones who own up to them are worth keeping," Josie replied. She paused, then added, "He also would have said you make the best chicken and dumplings in the territory, and that makes up for a lot." Agnes let out a surprised laugh and pulled Josie into a long hug. As the sun set, the townspeople headed home, their voices carrying on the cold air, full of the warmth that comes from doing the right thing together. Morrison stayed for supper. He ate 2 big bowls of Hattie's stew and declared it the best meal he'd had in years. After he left, a new kind of quiet settled over the cabin. It wasn't the silence of strangers or a family under attack. It was the deep, bone-weary peace of people who had been through a storm and found the calm on the other side. Bertie was asleep, Sam was passed out by the fire, and Hattie was reading by the lamplight. Clementine sat at the table drawing with a piece of charcoal. Ezra was standing by the door, his knife put away and the rifle back on its rack. He looked at Silas, his expression a mix of emotions that had been building for weeks. "I owe you something," the boy said finally. "You don't owe me a thing. I owe you an apology. I treated you like a criminal from the moment I saw that poster. I watched you every night, just waiting for you to prove me right. You were just protecting your family. There's nothing to apologize for." "Maybe," Ezra's voice cracked, "but I was also scared. Scared that if I trusted you and I was wrong, it would break this family for good. Like when Papa died." Silas just waited, letting the boy's words hang in the air. "You're not Papa," Ezra said, his voice low. "I don't want you to be. But we need someone. I need someone. I'm 11 years old, Mr. Thorne, but I've been acting like I'm 40, and I'm just so tired." Silas crossed the room and knelt down in front of the boy, eye to eye. "You did a man's job, Ezra. A better job than most men could have. But you're still a boy, and a boy deserves to sleep without worry. So here's my offer. I'll watch the door, every night. You get some rest, and if trouble comes, I'll wake you. We'll face it together. Not because you can't do it alone, but because you shouldn't have to." Ezra didn't cry, but he leaned forward until his forehead rested on Silas's shoulder. He stayed there for a long moment, then pulled back. "Deal," Ezra whispered. "Deal," Silas answered. From the kitchen doorway, Josie watched them. She didn't say a word. Some things don't need any. That night, after the children were all asleep, Josie and Silas sat at the kitchen table. The quiet felt earned, like the calm after a big storm. "You got a new letter from your sister, Ruth," Josie said, nodding toward a fresh envelope on the shelf. Silas touched the paper like it might burn him. "She wants me to come on home to Ohio. Says the whole family ought to be together." A long pause settled between them. "What'd you tell her?" he finally asked. "I told her," he said, his eyes finding hers across the flickering lamplight, "that I found something out here in this wild country I wasn't ready to leave behind. A few someones, actually." Josie reached across the table and took his hand. It wasn't a timid gesture, it was a decision. "My husband Robert has been gone 2 years," she said, her voice steady. "And I have spent every single one of those days proving to the world and myself that I could do it all alone. That a woman by herself wasn't a woman without worth." "You are more than enough, Josie," he said softly. Always have been. I know, she agreed, but being enough ain't the same as being whole. She squeezed his hand. I need to ask you something important. Are you safe with us? Because these kids, well, they're already starting to love you. And if you decide to leave, it won't just break their hearts. It'll break mine. So if you stay, it has to be for good. No more running. Josie Bellamy, he said, his voice full of wonder. I rode for 8 days through a blizzard with a hole in my side just to get here. I've been yours since the night you stitched me up on this very floor. The only reason I haven't said it aloud is because I was waiting for you to believe you deserved to hear it. She stood up, walked around the table, and put her hands on his face. She looked at him with that fearless gaze of hers. Then stay, she whispered. Yes, ma'am. And she kissed him. It was a kiss that sealed a promise, a slow and sure meeting of a woman who had made her choice and a man who was finally home. From the loft above, a loud whisper cut through the quiet. Hattie, are they kissing? Hush up, Sam, came the reply. In the corner, little Clementine held up a drawing she'd been working on. It showed 6 figures in front of their cabin. But now the tall man and the woman were standing side by side, their hands drawn so they were touching. And beneath them, in a child's shaky letters, was a single word. Us. Spring arrived like it always does in the high country, all at once and full of life. The creek roared, the garden was ready for planting, and the whole world felt new. Silas and Josie worked together in the garden, their movements falling into a rhythm as natural as breathing. The kids blossomed, too. Hattie took over the cooking. Ezra fixed fences without a word of complaint, and for the first time in 2 years, he slept soundly through the night, knowing Silas was keeping watch. The news about Harrison, the man who'd framed Silas, came quick. With the proof Silas provided, the congressman's whole corrupt world fell apart. The papers called Silas a hero, the man who saved 12 lives and paid for another man's cowardice. Ruth's letters came every week, full of plans for a summer visit. Their broken family was finally mending. One evening, Josie found Silas up on the ridge by the wooden cross that marked her husband's grave. He was just standing there, hat in his hands, talking quietly. Just introducing myself, he said when he saw her. Figured it was the right thing to do. Josie came and stood next to him. What'd you tell him? That I'd look after what he built, Silas answered. That his kids are as brave and stubborn as their mama, and that I'm not here to replace him, just to be worthy of what he started. Josie slipped her hand into his. He would have liked you, she said. Silas looked at her, a question in his eyes. Oh, he would have said you talk too much and your coffee's too strong, she said with a small smile. Then he would have shaken your hand and told you, welcome home. Down below, the homestead was alive. Smoke curled from the chimney. The garden was a patch of bright green, and through the open window they could hear the sounds of their family, arguing, singing, and laughing. It was the sound of a life made whole. Josie leaned her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. Robert Bellamy watched the sun settle behind the mountains. No words were spoken because some feelings are just too big for them. The truth of it all was plain and simple, even if getting there was not. A man fell from his horse into a blizzard. A woman chose to pull him from the snow instead of letting him be. 5 children, each in their own time, decided to let a stranger become kin. This homestead, once held together by nothing more than one woman's grit, turned into something more. It became a place where broken souls could mend one another, where silence found its voice again. Love here was not about promises. It was in the quiet stitches sewn by lamplight, and the bread shared across a table made by hands long gone, but never forgotten. The night Josie Bellamy opened her door was the night Silas Thorne stopped running. And it was the night she stopped carrying the weight of the world all on her own. That was the whole story. And it was enough.